Welcome to Electronic Specifier Insights, the podcast for electronics engineers. I'm your host, Paige West. In today's episode, I speak with Dermot O'Shea, co-founder and CEO of Taoglas. We explore the evolution of the Internet of Things, the future of connectivity, and the critical role of antenna innovation in enabling next-generation applications. Dermot also gives some insight into satellite IoT and NTN, non-terrestrial networks, as well as his thoughts on why industry collaboration is key to IoT's success. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Dermot O'Shea, who is the co-founder and CEO of Taoglas. So thanks very much for joining us, Dermot. How are you?
I'm great, Paige, and yourself. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Why don't you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and your background to start with?
Yeah, I'm Dermot O'Shea, CEO and co-founder of Taoglas. 22 years in this position. So I'm originally from Ireland and moved over to San Diego, California in 2010 to set up Taoglas USA. And yeah, we founded a company in Taiwan, actually. We started with antennas and that's still the main part of our business today.
Excellent. And tell us a bit more about the business, Dermot. Tell us about Taoglas and what it is you specialise in.
Yeah, so Taoglas, specializes in connectivity solutions for IoT, mainly through antennas, RF components, and other connector connectivity. We have a global presence, 9 facilities globally. In each one, we can fully design, prototype, and assemble an antenna for any use case or application. Most of our products are cellular and GNSS. And we kind of become the RF and antenna engineering arm for our customers. So we partner with customers to develop their products and make sure their products have the best connectivity that they can get.
Fantastic. So I'd like to speak with you about a few things today, namely the evolution of IoT, the future of connectivity, and the critical role of antenna innovation in enabling next generation applications. And we all know that the IoT has evolved significantly over the past decade. So what do you see as the biggest change that has shaped the industry?
I think the biggest change that has shaped our industry is the network evolution. So, we had 2G when we started, was just emerging, and that got sunset. Then 3G got sunset. Now people are designing for 5G. And, there's a lot kind of in between all of that as well. Like in those, Gs, there's been like categories of LTE and different requirements for customers. Customers have had experiences with LoRa, and some of those networks have sunset as well. And then GNSS has been on an evolution of improvement too. But what it means each time is, customers have to reevaluate, redesign, recertify. And I think that's had the biggest effect on the industry. It, costs customers the most money and it kind of, I suppose, slows down things a lot as well because you have to keep redesigning. So for me, when I think about change, that's always the biggest change that the market goes through.
And what about other buzzwords like AI, edge computing, and you mentioned 5G, but there's also talk of 6G as well now. How are they influencing IoT adoption?
Yeah, I think, look, they're really helping, right? So IoT is part of all of those things, like we got excited ourselves at CES when we saw the keynote of the NVIDIA CEO because he's talking about physical AI and how important that is, meaning, the robots and the cars and all this autonomy is finally coming to market. And, IoT, antennas, sensors, connectivity, critical piece of that. Like edge computing, etc. We just call all of that, IoT. But without good connectivity and good, well-designed IoT products that are competitively priced, you can't realize that. We haven't been on the 6G conversation yet, other than, we're always trying to stay at the forefront of what's coming next. So talking to the operators and the chipset vendors, and researching ourselves to see, what's expected next, what's kind of coming around the corner, and trying to anticipate that and using, that to formulate our research anyway. But like for all of these things, the customer is always going to demand, more connectivity, more reliable connectivity, faster throughput, more data. And, no one really thinks about antennas and all that per se, but they are obviously an important part of it because you need them to realize that experience.
Yes, definitely. And following on from what you've just said, what challenges do you think still need to be addressed to be able to unlock the full potential of IoT?
Well, I think it's what we've already mentioned. Sorry to repeat it, but just maybe to expand on it. It's the constant changes that the end customers are put through in this market. So, on top of the sunsets, like recently we've had the COVID experience, where everything stopped, then came back with a boom, then stopped again because we all had supply chain shortages. So customers had chip shortages where they couldn't assemble their final product because they were missing something inside. A lot of customers had to redesign. If they didn't redesign, they had to would just wait for the parts. And now today we're dealing with tariffs on products into the US, where all suppliers are looking at where am I going to make my product. Like we all made decisions on that, and those decisions could be drastically affected by the tariffs that are being put on what is probably most people's biggest market from a volume perspective. So it's the constant change, and I see fatigue with customers. I see where they're like, instead of adopting the latest technology, they're kind of saying we have to, from a financial perspective, run with what we have right now because we missed out on so much because we were not doing anything for so long. So I'm realizing some fatigue, and I think it's all those changes that are the biggest challenge to customers and to, as you ask, unlocking that full potential of IoT.
Yeah, definitely. And is that not essentially causing long-term problems for people though, if they're focusing on, just working with what they have at the minute, in the long run, they're not integrating the technology that they need to now.
For sure, there's I could see like there's fear, and it's fatigue, as I said, and fear, right? Customers afraid. Well, now you're telling me I should use Cat One Biz for my LTE module for a IoT project, but you've told me something different every 2 years, and there's a lack of trust there almost as well, and you can understand that, right? Because this has cost millions to all these companies, and they're just a little unsure about what technology can they rely on for longevity of a product design, because they haven't seen that in the past. So I think people are way more cautious and not as optimistic about what can happen with it in the future. They're kind of like treading carefully right now and going, well, I kind of trust the older stuff a little bit more. If I have something now that's shipping today, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, the new technology adds might make it faster, they might make it better, they may add more features, but at the same time, I'm inclined to kind of wait before I do anything new right now.
Yeah, that's certainly understandable. So let's focus on your speciality now. Taoglas has been at the forefront of antenna innovation. So how have antenna designs evolved to meet the growing demands of IoT?
Yeah, like there's lots of innovation and creativity in the world of antennas, but like our mantra has to be, you know, cheaper, faster, and better, because that's what our customers want. That's what the market demands. So we're constantly challenged with all those changes that we mentioned, particularly around networks and new technologies. You're adding more frequencies and wider bandwidth to the antennas. But with that, customers also want you to make them smaller, make them look cooler, etc. And then you also have to make them cheaper. Ideally, that's the technology curve, right? Even though the technology improves for the mass adoption of IoT, you have to make them cheaper. So really, our designs and innovation is all formulated around that. Nobody needs a beautiful looking, amazingly designed antenna if they can't afford to buy it for their use case, right? You have to find that balance. And that's kind of where we fall. And I think our engineers, understand that. We're very experienced at it now, and they know where the limitations can be from a material selection standpoint. But like it really has evolved. Like the software to do simulations has gotten so much better. The equipment to test antennas has really gotten faster. It's gone really fast. It used to be a slow process. And like every month now I see beautiful new toys in the mechanical engineering area for prototyping. Like 3D printers are everywhere. The schools have them now, laser cutters, 3D scanners. They've all become affordable, and so we have all these really useful tools for prototyping very, very quickly in house. So yeah, it's been great to watch, but we have to innovate kind of like with the market and with the customer in mind as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a very good point. And you mentioned it already, but there's an increasing need for multi-band high performance connectivity. So how do you ensure that your antennas remain cutting edge?
So I would say the most important part is, the experience of an antenna engineer. Like theory only gets you so far. Like obviously you need the theory for the foundation, and then you use the latest and greatest tools like we mentioned. But you also need to have the experience from the past to know, what works, what doesn't work, when you were faced with challenges, how you overcame them. And there's a lot of creativity required because each problem an antenna engineer runs into is a new one. And like we work with, tiny devices that are body worn up to, very large antennas, that may go on an airplane or something like that. So it's a wide range of use cases and applications. And then on the research side, we're also very open and collaborative. We work with customers, we work with suppliers, we collaborate with other industry partners like the module vendors, the chipset vendors, the operators, and then the universities in each location that we're in. We work on projects in Europe with some of the Irish universities. We're working locally here in San Diego with San Diego State, and we've done other collaborations with universities as well. So we're always open to it. Material innovation is important to us as well. So we would often be approached by companies in the area that have maybe developed a new material that conducts well or has good conductive properties. And we're always open to testing that and seeing how antennas can perform on it. And, we've seen innovations from Taoglas in the past because of that. For example, our invisible antennas would have come from, like we didn't invent the material. Our innovation was in how we can use that material for antennas. So it's a collaborative effort. And I think, that's how we make sure that we're always innovating. We have an innovation council in our company. We meet every month and we talk about where the market's going and what products are required for that. And we have some of our distributors and customers would be involved in us getting feedback on those antennas and testing those antennas before we launch them.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great to hear, and a very important thing to be doing. How do you see satellite IoT and NTN shaping the future of connectivity?
Yeah, good question, because it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, right? And the jury is out from my perspective because we've had this before, right? And not to be I don't want to be, a joy kill on that, but we've worked with satellite operators before that have come into this space, and there is limitations on the technology because one of the issues is people will compare it to cellular, and it can be quite expensive. And then you're also looking at it's an area that customers don't have experience in, so they don't have that learned from my mistakes from an engineering perspective. And, I think I've seen some customers with NTN are like expecting this Starlink experience from that satellite technology in the IoT product. And it's not that. It is a fantastic solution to have as an alternative and as a backup in case your device lands in a non-cellular area. But it's not you can't compare it to cellular. You can't compare it to Starlink. Starlink has a big modem, a large antenna. It has, very unbelievable technology and how it tracks and connects to the satellites. NTN is a fantastic technology as well, but it's not Starlink. So I think, and I've seen this in the past, who's going to set all those customer expectations when you're trying to sell them a solution? Okay, so, obviously whoever's selling them the technology is going to be very gung-ho about it, and the customer gets excited as well. So I think it's great to have it. It's not that expensive to add it right now to an IoT product, but it's going to have limitations on performance, and I wouldn't be I would just see it as like a backup for certain. You can use it for certain applications on your device when there's no cellular, but it's not Starlink and it's not a replacement for cellular.
Okay. Yeah. Very good point. Focusing on the company now then, because I know you've expanded significantly across global markets. So what have been the key factors in scaling the company internationally?
Well, the key factor is obviously to grow sales, to not be reliant on one particular market. We've seen that in the past. We've had booms and ups and downs in each market, like Brazil or South Africa or, something like that. So it's nice from that perspective. I would say another great thing about it is what happens in one market tends to happen in another. So we cut our teeth in tracking devices 20 years ago in South Africa. And what we learned there, we were able to apply to the telematics industry when that became a thing in North America and Europe. And, we've seen that with some technologies here in the US as well, particularly in the areas of public safety. What goes into the police cars and ambulances here happens in Europe maybe about a year later. So it's great from that perspective. And it also just gives you a lot of flexibility, right? If you're spread wide and far, if something happens, like we've had a customer who had all their engineering in Russia, and then they're in a scramble to get it out at a certain time. So we were able to help them with that because we had some engineers in Poland, for example. So there's one thing that's sure in this market is change is guaranteed, and you just need to have alternatives and not rely on one location for everything, from an engineering perspective, from an R&D perspective, from a production perspective, and have that flexibility to be able to lean on one location because another place is under pressure. So, they're the main reasons for it.
I'm interested to hear, as a co-founder, what have been the most valuable lessons that you've learned in growing the company?
It's all about people. Everything great that happens is because of the people that you have, and everything bad that happens is because of the people that you have. It's not about, it's at the end of the day, it's not really about the products that you have in the market that you're in. And, it's all about the people, if you've got, and it's how you manage, issues when they come up. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what makes a great team is everyone can work well together when things are going well. But how do you work together when, you're up against it and there's adversity and there's challenges? That's what I think really makes a great team. So, when people ask me, like, what's the key to your success? It's the team that you build. It's the people that you work with. It's the culture that you set in the company. Because if all that is good, you can kind of sell anything, in my opinion. If you have all those, a great culture and great people and a great team, you can develop, a market for yourself anywhere, and you can probably sell anything. That's what I believe. And, that's something that we're always looking to improve is, and it's something that's, you never like go, we've got a great culture now and my job's done. It's evolving. It certainly changes. It changes as the company gets more mature and as the company gets bigger. And it's something that you have to keep working on.
Yeah, definitely. And it leads me on to my next point, which is that I think one of the keys to IoT success is going to be industry collaboration. So can you share any examples with us of successful partnerships or initiatives that you've been involved in?
Yeah, like, one initiative, I suppose, that we're heavily focused on right now is we are moving to a channel sales strategy. So we're working more with our distributors, value-added resellers, manufacturers, reps, etc., all across the world, because we can't service tens of thousands of customers directly ourselves. And I would say that's probably something we tried 20 years ago and didn't work. And I think it was because at that time, there wasn't the same understanding of IoT, the challenges of IoT, and experience in the channel that they have now, right? I think all channel partners have done IoT projects now. They've worked with customers, they've worked with some of our competitors. So they understand the pitfalls of IoT product design, and they can be a valuable resource now to customers. And, it's kind of that kind of encompasses a wide industry collaboration, because those same channel partners represent the chipset guys who develop, the technology, so these devices can communicate in cellular. And then you have our module partners who adopt those chipsets and make modules from them so all IoT customers can use them. And then you have the operators, where some of our reseller partners resell network time and airtime. So this channel is now selling, solutions from all our industry partners. So it becomes an overall collaboration. So what you find yourself doing is you're doing trade shows together, industry events together, you're doing talks to customers together, and then you're working on projects together, which is the really exciting thing. So I think everyone that's a partner, so we're selling to the same customers, but we're not buying and selling from each other. We realize that the end customer needs help in getting a product to market. So if we work together as partners, that customer gets there quicker and gets there with a better product. So I think every product we work on is a collaboration. We're never, closing the doors here at Taoglas and working by ourselves. We would always ask the customer, who's your module vendor? Who's your operator? Where are you manufacturing it? Who's your contract manufacturer? Who's your end customer? What other suppliers do you have? So that we come together with as a partner to figure out, the design, not just the design process, but also the certification path when it's going to be done. That's another partner, is the certification houses that we work with. And then when's it going into production? How many pieces are you going to need first? Get the schedules down so that we can work backwards and make sure that the customer hits those. And then if we hit roadblocks, then it's more efficient for the customer, because we're able to reach out to those partners and say, hey, we're seeing this in the test lab during certification. Have you seen this with any other products, et cetera, et cetera? So I feel like we're able to add more value to the customer by being a key industry partner. And I think we've realized that through that channel strategy, because they're the ones that are kind of overseeing everything and have that interest to keep all the partners involved, because they're, at the end of the day, we all just want to sell something. And so we're all, back in the same horses, working on the same projects to get them to the end line.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. And speaking of projects, what's next? Are you working on any innovations or projects that you can share with us?
Oh yeah, like we're constantly launching new products to meet. So what we would look to first is like what chipsets and what modules are coming out, what routers are being launched, so that we have the antennas ready for those when they launch. Because the first thing the customer would ask the router guy is, what antenna do I test your router with, right? We have new antenna enclosures coming out next quarter. So they're the antenna that also has a space inside the antenna to fit all the different router brands that are common in the IoT and mobility world. So that's our next kind of, product line launch, I would say, because we need different ones for different routers. There's big ones, there's small ones, there's heavy ones, there's light ones. They have different connection requirements, etc. So it's kind of a natural evolution from some what we call network in a box, which is like a carry case where we, kit everything for the customer, the antenna, the battery, the cables, and then the customer just simply installs the router in a location in the box, and then they're able to close and open the box and carry it around like a suitcase, and it gives them, a network connectivity option for their workers gives their workers a secure environment to work with, so they're not connecting to public Wi-Fi's on their own work laptops when they're on the move. So we've seen a need for these antenna enclosures as well to simplify installations. So the installer has to install an antenna anyway. This is an outdoor environment antenna, and rather than chasing the cable somewhere to the router, they can now install the router in the antenna enclosure. So there's other products like that out there, but none of them are specifically designed for the routers. So you have a case where installers are trying to jam or retrofit routers into a space that's not specifically designed for their router. In this case, you look up the router model and it'll tell you exactly which enclosure to select, so that during the installation there's a nice slot that the router will fit into, and you simply just secure the router in with screws. So very nice solution, and that's what's coming out next.
Excellent. Well, watch this space, and I'll certainly encourage our listeners to keep an eye on Taoglas to see what else you have coming out this year. Is there anything else you want to add, Dermot, before we wrap up?
Just if as I said, we specialize in antennas. We also do some other connectivity parts, but it's a collaborative process. So if any customers are curious about us, please reach out. We're a very open and collaborative company, and we all really love what we do, even though that may sound nerdy to say we love working on these parts every day. But yeah, just thanks for your time, Paige, and reach out to us if anybody has any more questions.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you and learning more about the company. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Electronic Specifier Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to the series to keep up to date with our newest guests, and do share with fellow colleagues, friends and family who may be interested in the latest news from the electronics industry.